Climbing's exploding, and with every new gym that opens, there must be a new route setter, right? Not quite. We're running out of route setters, and we need more of them, and we need to start talking about how we're going to train and teach route setters. Fuck this shit, man. This is why I have to write this stuff down, because if I'm trying to make it up, I fluff it. Today on Plastic Weekly, we're starting a new series to talk about the state of route setting, how we teach new setters, and what we can learn from different setters around the world. Stick around for it. When I started thinking about developing Plastic Weekly, there was a small handful of topics that I really wanted to explore, and one of my biggest interests was what I see as a serious lack of resources for aspiring route setters to get better at their job. That means brand new setters looking to get a job at their local gym, and longtime setters with maybe decades of experience trying to figure out how to stay relevant in the age of running dynos and bat hang finishes. I originally thought I'd just tape one episode on the topic, but now that I'm getting the hang of this, I'm realizing it will make more sense and be way more in-depth if I spread it out over time and talk to a lot of different voices. And on this episode, I finally get started. It makes a lot of sense for me to start this discussion where I started setting, and with someone who shares a lot of setting lineage with me. In fact, we both first learned how to set from the same guy. Fortunately, he's traveled a lot, and most Canadians, plus a good chunk of Americans, are already familiar with his work as well. He's set championships in Canada and the States, thrown up problems for World Cups, and he's been an international competitor himself. Here to talk about being a good teacher, running a crew, and how he managed to become the only Canadian with a Level 4 USA setting certification somehow, is the purveyor of destiny himself, Dustin Curtis. Climbing's exploding around the world, and to match that demand, gyms need more route setters, especially here in Canada, where everybody's so far apart. It can be hard to learn from other great route setters or people that can teach you new tricks from other parts of the country or other parts of the world. With me right now is one of Canada's indisputable top route setters, Dustin Curtis, to talk a little bit about the state of learning how to route set in Canada. Dustin, thanks a million for sitting down for a second.
I'm really psyched to do this.
Man.
This is a super cool thing. The Plastic Weekly,
I appreciate it.
Cool.
I had a blast doing the live stream for the Tour de Bloc Nationals with you. That was hilarious.
It was dope.
And I'm glad we can sit down and chat a little bit more. Just to kind of illustrate where I'm coming from, or where a lot of people are coming from, I set a competition like 3 months into my setting career. So I had just started trying to learn how to set, and that was a Tour de Bloc, and you were one of the head route setters for that comp. And I agonized over this easy-ish climb that I was supposed to set. I put it up with all these Technic mini jugs, and it's a basic thing where you effectively set a ladder in hindsight, but you're still you're new to it and you're trying to make this thing go and make it a sick climb. And we finally get to the point where we're forerunning and we're walking around and checking out all the climbs, and you come over to mine and you look at it for a second, you didn't even touch it, you just looked at it and you're like, well, I guess there has to be a number one. And I was like, damn it, I spent all this time on this climb that ended up being...
No, man, number one is important. It's the leader.
I knew what you meant when you said it. It was, and that just kind of showed me that, it's really hard to learn how to route setting if you don't have somebody that's actively with you. We all, for the most part, we've all learned in environments where you join a crew, you learn some basics about how to turn wrenches, but the movement and stuff, you hope somebody will give you good feedback in forerunning. That's kind of a lot of the time that's the best you get. So this conversation is relevant to everybody, and I know how it feels. So you're one of the guys that a lot of Canadians look up to in route setting, and so since we're talking about how to learn route setting, I want to know how you learned to route set. What was your journey to where you are now?
Well, I started at a gym in my hometown of Newmarket. Aaron Eden was actually the first person to put wrenches in my hand and let me do some crazy things, and I remember my first route was horrible. It was this 5-7 with all these underclings, and Aaron comes down from it, and it was all underclings, and Aaron comes down and he's like, well, and I could see on his face that he was like, whoa, dude, horrible. But yeah, so I grew up in Rock and Shock, and I set a bunch of roots. And Aaron gave me a bunch of feedback, and then I moved to Ottawa, and it really hit me then when I went to Coyote, and someone had told me, go to Coyote, ask Jody if you can just learn from him. Comp climbing, how to train, how to set, just ask, like, be the sponge.
This is Jody Mile.
Yeah,
at,
Jody
at
Mile.
Coyote
And that's,
Rock Gym in Ottawa.
That's kind of what took it, like, over those years. I think it was 4 or 5 years with Jody that just turned me on to this, like, I want to be the best root setter I can be. And so I started looking for clinics, and that's where I ended up meeting Chris Danielson and learning, taking a bunch of his clinics and learning from him in the States. And even then afterwards, I still wanted more, so I took a clinic from Tonde, and I got the opportunity to set with him a bunch. And then over the years, I've just accumulated getting to work with these really big names. I've been so lucky, actually, thinking about it, and learning from them. Percy Bishton was one of my, like, setting heroes, and when I set a World Cup with him, I fanboyed so hard. It was hard. It was so hard not to.
Just for some perspective, how long have you been root setting? We got to put this timeline in some context.
I think I'm 16 or 17 years into root setting now.
Okay, yeah. So just so people know kind of how that process goes. So you started in Ontario. You've only recently got back from Ontario. You've set at a ton of gyms in basically any English-speaking province. You've probably root set there. How many different facilities have you spent time working as a commercial root setter?
I think off the top of my head, it's somewhere in the realm of 7 to 10.
Okay.
There was a weird period where, like, I hadn't. I was getting contracts to commercially set at Grand River Rocks and Rock Oasis, but I wasn't actually working there.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, about 7 to 10.
Do you consider that to be a really important part of becoming a good root setter, is setting at lots of gyms? Because I think it's more common in the States, where it's fairly easy to go state to state, gym to gym. In Canada, the distances are bigger, but would you credit that to a lot of your development?
Yeah, actually, I know it's a unique case, and I know that I've personally had a lot of opportunities, and I've been very lucky with that, but it has shaped the root setter that I've become. Each facility has challenges and successes that make or break your root setting career, and I think I've been lucky to have a lot of success. I think that working in different gyms has definitely given me perspective, and there's these aha moments of, like, oh, I remember when we did it at this gym like this. We shouldn't do that because it went horrible. Or the opposite of, hey, I remember that we did it like this in this gym and it really worked out, so we should definitely do that.
If you've got a root setter that's been at a gym for a couple of years and they're doing a good job and they're getting paid well, would you recommend that they stay there, take the pay, keep doing their thing there, or would you say you should try and get out and switch it up if you want to become a great root setter?
I think there's merits to both. I think there's opportunities now with the amount of talent that we have in commercial root setting and competition setting. I think we can draw on that a bunch, and it really depends on the situation. I have this weird thing where I need to go and get on a plane and root set somewhere. It's an itch that happens every year, usually around comp season. I feel this urge to go and set somewhere where it isn't my home. And so I usually try and facilitate that with comps, but I think that if the root setter is talented and he or she has good leadership qualities, and now especially with the way the industry is moving, we need good administrative. Like, I suck at emails. I absolutely suck at them, but that's the thing that is part of the job now. So if they're in a state where they can go and move to another gym, I fully encourage it. I also encourage being loyal, because I think that sometimes there's opportunities within the home facility to move up and take new challenges. Look at yourself. Like, this is the natural progression of root setters, is general management. That's where we're headed, is like, you get to a point where you're good and you're really, really good at management and helping support a crew, and that's kind of like, sometimes that's the end goal.
Mm-hmm. Aside from working at gyms and a bunch of clinics, you definitely hold the distinction of being the highest ranked Canadian setter in the USAC setting world. You're the only Canadian who's at level 4. I think there's one Canadian, I can't remember, who's level 2. And then the rest of us, all of us Gumbies, were down level 1.
I feel like it's Mike Doyle that's 2.
It could be. I don't know. It's been a while, and ever since they made you pay to be technically registered, you can't see the list anymore. But you were the one guy with an asterisk beside his name on that list. How the hell did that happen? Because I would not be able to get into a level 2 clinic now if I tried, because it is very important that they bring up new American root setters, because their comps are spreading everywhere and there's so many gyms. I understand they need to do that. They got to take care of their own. How did you manage to get through that system?
So I think I came to the USAC clinics a little early, and they weren't necessarily looking for they weren't necessarily getting filled up by U.S. root setters. As I said, Chris Danielson was a great teacher of mine, and I actively pursued going to a level 2. And finally, he said there was one in Portland.
Portland, Oregon? Maine?
Oregon, yeah.
Okay, cool.
And I mistook it for Portland, Maine. So, my plans were I'm going to drive my car. I'm going to sleep in my car.
You were Ontario-based at this point, so a few-hour drive, I guess.
Yeah, it's 9-hour drive.
Okay.
No big deal.
Yeah.
But then, leading up to the last days where he said, "Oh, there's this extra slot. You can take it. You just have to get there, and you can stay in the hotel room with me." And I was like, "Okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to drive." And then, I guess 3 or 4 days before, he was like, it's Oregon, right? And I was like, no. But anyway, I got I did my level 2, which that clinic is super cool. And I was really fortunate to have Chris Danielson and Molly Beard as my teachers, and they're fantastic. I ended that clinic, and then I kind of thought everything was done with USAC. I was still trying to actively pursue opportunities to work in USAC, and then the call came out for root setters to do youth nationals, and I was already doing our youth nationals.
Canadian youth nationals.
Yeah.
You got a call for the American one?
Well, they put out applications for the American one, and I applied thinking that I wasn't going to get it, because it was a week before our youth nationals and 2 weeks before the TIVA World Cup that I was going to compete in.
As an athlete, yeah.
So I didn't think I was going to get it. I got this email from Mike. What's his name? Mike. He runs Climbing Business Journal now.
Oh, Mike Helt.
Mike Helt, yeah. I got an email from Mike Helt, who was the chief. And I'd met him at my clinic, at the level 2 clinic, and he said, he emailed me back and was like, "We'd love to have you on the crew." And I was like, what happened here? So in the span of 3 weeks, I set 2 nationals and
Competed in a World Cup.
But the thing was that there was weird string things that I had to do to set the U.S. nationals. I was definitely the grunt man. They knew. Yeah. I knew going in that I was going to spin holds, and I was going to be the guy to sent up to do anything.
Yeah.
And I was going to be fine.
Yeah, you're the intern.
Yeah, I was the intern. Also, I didn't get a hotel bed.
Oh, no.
So I shoved these 2 armchairs up against each other. It was cool, because I was fanboying over the root setting crew as whole. They actually sent me over the wall at one point. Me and Jeremy Harding.
Was this the pyramid wall?
No. It was in Stone Summit, and it had just been built in Atlanta, and it was huge in this daunting, giant gym.
Yeah.
Especially for a Canadian boy, I was like,
"Oh yeah, this is Rope Nationals."
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah. So this giant facility had just opened up, and I was like, "Oh my god!"
Yeah.
75-foot walls. This thing's scary.
Yeah, man.
And during the comp, one of the quick draws got clipped up, and Jeremy just grabbed me and was like, "We're going." So we run behind the wall, climb up this thing. He sends a rappel rope over, and he's like, "Okay, go down and fix it." And I'm like, "Okay." And so I just like hop over the wall and like rappel down, fix the clip, get back, and in debrief, Jeremy's like, I don't know what knot I tied on the end of that, but it wasn't a figure eight. Oh, okay, cool. But yeah, I ended up setting U.S. Youth Nationals, and then Chris, then I just got my level 4, and I was like, whoa, weird.
That's amazing. I feel like there's going to be a lot of Canadian setters now just emailing the USAC nonstop trying to get a spot.
Chris has said to both me and Caleb that we're never going to get any higher levels because they're
they
too
have to
busy.
focus on the Americans at this point.
And hopefully, eventually, we can get our own program.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that. Canada, obviously a fraction of the size. Let's assume it's a tenth the size. Canada has really strong gym cultures centered around big cities, but those cities are really spread out. Fortunately, we've kind of got, some really solid setters per province. You might have one or two per province who have done a World Cup and have some international experience, but that's not much. And you guys are commercial setters still. Like, you guys have jobs, right? You guys got stuff to do. I don't know the history of USAC setting. We'll talk about that with somebody that knows what's up. But is there anybody in Canada that's working on actually making some progress in creating a framework either to teach commercial route setting or to teach competition route setting? Because we need it at this point. Like, your gym is a great example where you just started working here at Up the Block, and when you went to hire an assistant route setter, that was pulled from another gym, and there was like 4 or 5 gyms trying to get that guy. Like, setters are in short supply here in Canada.
Yeah, I think like our market is exploding, and we need to answer it with more talented and creative individuals who can meet the demands of our job and of the market that I love. But I think we need to train more route setters, and that's the reality. Is we need to be teaching. And
so is that on the gym? Is that like on the head route setters? Is that a head route setter's burden right now?
I believe now it is.
Yeah.
I think like now, especially.
Well, there's nobody else really.
Yeah. Well, and now I think that head route setters have to learn to. It's one of the skill sets that they have to have is just being good teachers and being able to offer up good constructive criticism and feedback, and not just like, oh yeah, that moves good.
Yeah.
Like that's, or on the opposite, that moves bad. Why is it bad? Why is it good? Like, I think those are the things that need to be part of the head route setter's skill set now. Mm-hmm. It's not just like, can you manage a crew? Can you make a schedule? Can you answer emails, which I can't apparently. Can you all of these things are part of the job now that has been evolving, because definitely the job that Jody taught me to do isn't exactly the job I have now. Mm-hmm. And we have to grow and evolve, and thus we also have to teach.
The U.S. Model, which we'll just use because it's the kind of the closest thing to us, predominantly is a system that's built to train and organize and categorize setters for competition. So it, especially after level 1, it doesn't focus too much on commercial setting or like the raw skills of setting. You talk about, basic like handiwork in terms of dealing with the kind of like quasi construction environment that route setters work in, the difference between comp setting and commercial setting, management, just managing a crew. What do you think is the most important thing to start with when we're trying to train setters? Like, where do you think we're not placing really enough value right now?
It's hard to say. That's a really interesting question, and I hadn't thought about it, but
because I've been route setting very on and off, and especially lately barely at all for 6 years now. I have no handy skills at all. Like, I can't use tools for anything. Like, I will find a way to make an impact driver do whatever job I need done. That's all I know how to use. I feel for me that's something that I wish more route setters had, because it really opens up a lot of windows when you can fix problems and build structures and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, maybe it's something else. I don't know. Like, when you're looking at route setting crews, you've been to a lot of gyms. What are the weak points in setting crews in Canada, you think, right now?
Well, actually, the easiest thing to say is that we lack teachers, because you can be good at route setting and not know how to translate that knowledge and that experience into someone. And I think teaching is definitely one of the things we're lacking. we're definitely lacking a standardized system of doing comps. That's one of the things that I'd like to see come about in the future. But I also think we just need to rise to the challenge as root setters, and the root setting community needs to grow to a point where we can teach well and have a system to do that, and also rise to the challenge of the demand that's being put on us, because now it's no longer just members like setting for free. Now it's a quality product that we offer, and as a gym, it's the responsibility of the gym to provide all the necessary elements for root setters to succeed. But we as the root setting community need to grow and rise to the challenge that the gyms are bringing to us, because like now it's not even about like holds are old or anything like that. It's like,
you mentioned that teaching is something you wish that root setters were better at, and kind of talked about communication and how we criticize each other. It's not just the head root setters that need to learn how to teach. Like there needs to be this kind of like we need to, I think your point of we need to be able to talk to each other better and give better criticism is really an important idea. Yourself, how do you deal with that when you're dealing with your root setters or here or in the past?
well, this is actually the first gym where I don't feel like I'm teaching. I feel I'm working with my peers and equals. Like Adam's been a head root setter for X amount of years, and Nikki, my other guy, has been a head root setter in Germany. So we have discussions that are unique to this facility because there's so much experience in this root setting crew that I feel dwarfed a little bit by it.
Okay.
And most of the time it's not necessarily about me guiding a conversation as much as it is them, the three of us all agreeing on what we envision for the root setting to be at this gym. And it was important to me at the start that vision was shared with, and it was something we created together, not just me saying, this is what I want to do. There are certain elements that I took the reins on. Like I love our turnover is insanely fast. If you don't, like a boulder problem being up for 18 days and then coming down.
We don't project here, apparently.
No. I often get asked, like, what... Well, anyway, go.
Not everybody has the fortune of having a crew full of head root setters. That is, I probably can't think of a single gym where every root setter has been a head root setter. So go back to all of the other gyms you've worked at. I want to hear some recommendations for how we can communicate better and how we can be more receptive to feedback. Like if you were to talk to me and I just set a trash route like the one we talked about at the start of the episode, how would you try and communicate with me that, hey, this climb is boring, this climb isn't very inspired? Like how should we be approaching our setters and our coworkers?
So I also, one of the things that I think has worked really well, and I did this at the Hive, and I thought it was one of the better ways that I've seen teaching root setters to teach. And it's, I basically worked it off of what every other industry uses is an apprentice program. So it's not anything new and it's not a new idea, but it was interesting the way it unfolded at the Hive was because we would hire a new root setter. We hired a lot of root setters that didn't have root setting experience at the Hive because like a lot of people wanted to learn. So
and this is Hive climbing in Vancouver.
Yeah. So what we would do is I would assign them to we called it Master and Padawan, but basically they would learn from one root setter, and that would work really well because teaching teaches you, and you learn how to communicate things, and you learn how to say things without being like, dude, that root is bad. Like you find ways, because you're always working with this person, you're responsible for this person's actions, and they're keeping tabs on you because it's really easy to say, don't do this ever again. And then like they come around the corner and you're doing that exact thing. And they're like, well, you just did that. You just told me not to do that.
Yeah.
And teaching teaches you. And I think that worked out really well because it taught the maybe senior root setter who wasn't necessarily the head root setter how to communicate and teach and give constructive feedback while being invested in that person's growth.
That's really interesting. How long would you make something like that last, where they kind of would be getting feedback from one person?
It depends. Like, some people grew really well underneath other people, and I would keep them there.
Yeah.
Some people would need to learn just one or two things. That I kind of played it like a game of, like, everybody has their strengths. So, like, I really want you to learn this. So you should. This person's really good at doing that. So you should learn that from them, but that's the only thing that I want you to learn from them.
Yeah.
You know?
Don't pick up the other stuff.
Yeah, like there's skill sets that every root setter I think has, and then there's like skill sets that are unique. I used to know this, like I had this one root setter in mind, and I won't say his name, but amazing at sorting bolts.
Okay.
Like, if there was ever this root setter Olympics, he would win on all this stuff that isn't root setting.
Okay.
And he could set like the meanest, awesomest, I mean mean as in like dope,
Yeah.
jug hauls.
Yeah.
But never had the mind for anything else above that. And it would just like, I would make him be the master of this Padawan for like 3 weeks to instill all of those things.
Yeah. The
And
fundamentals and like
and then move on.
Yeah. That's really interesting. I love that idea. That's really cool. I think it's something we find in each city, and I say this in Canada and maybe relevant in the States, but you do find regional identities in root setting, and it's often because you have a figurehead in that area that is kind of the person that everybody's working to live up to, kind of.
Yeah.
On a national basis, I'm really curious. Europeans have kind of an idea of what North American setting is, or like American setting, right? And over in North America, we have an idea of what Euro setting is. Do you think there is a divide between American and Canadian setting? And do you think there is kind of an identity growing behind what Canadian, so-called Canadian root setting is? Like, is there a difference between Canada and the States when it comes to the kind of climbs we put up?
I think a little bit. I think that, I mean, I often get told that I'm a very American root setter because I like long power endurance-y boulders, and like Caleb Thomas is always the person to tell me that it's like the boulder's too long. And I like that, but I do set short boulders too, so I don't think that that's necessarily a Canadian development. I'd have to say that we're growing, and we are becoming something that will be recognized. I think we just need to like push forward with what we're doing and again, teach, but I think also just the root setters that are at the top of Canada's game, one, need to be teaching, but two, just pushing what we identify as our style of setting, because it's that mixing pot that makes it interesting. Mm-hmm. It's that mixing pot that really is what I think we should what should become our identity is. Like, you can have funky Euro boulders, and you can have the long power endurance boulders, and you can have the runny doos and the jumpy doos, and you can have all of that in one comp, and it can be one root setter. And I think that's cool, because I think that's what makes the thing, like what makes our comps interesting. When you look at any comp that's at a national level, and we also have to manage the basis of like it being a show. That's the other challenge that has arisen now, is like, before,
you gotta get viewers, man.
Yeah, man, we need viewers. Like, before it was easy, you put holes in the wall, and like, well, I say easy, but like you still had to get separation and stuff like that. Now it's like there's this added pressure of like it needs to be the show, because if it's not,
yeah. You've got some of the most experience out of any Canadian root setter. So to finish off, I'm curious, after having sat with people like Percy Bishton and a bunch of other great setters around North America and the world, do you have any lessons, any like big picture, small picture, like, you know, lefty loosey, like anything like that? Anything that stands out that when you first got taught or your first tour, you're like, man, that's something I wish like everybody needs to know that. I don't know if there's any lessons you've ever learned that just make you, you know, that have stuck with you forever.
I don't know. I guess
And you know what? If that's too hard, I'll take like any hilarious memory of like meeting your heroes and them not being, not them being quite what you expected.
Okay, well, he's one of my route setting mentors, I would call him. I don't think that he'll ever admit to it. He better, though. Vincent Lagal at Delire is easily a genius, and no one knows about him. And
I don't know who that is.
He's one of the owners, and every time I go to one of his gyms and set, I learn something new that I'm just like.
And this is Delire Escalade in Quebec City.
Yeah. It's every time I go and set a comp with him, I learn something new. And the big aha moment that I think was my first one was when I went for youth nationals, and he showed me his ladders, and his ladders had the plywood ski on them.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like a biggest chump on the planet because I've been dragging around these like blue closed cell foam sheets for forever. And he showed it to me, and I was like, oh, why? How had no one taught me this? I went back to the Hive, or no, I was at True North. Yeah, I went back and I just put skis on the ladders the next day, and I was like, look, revolution. And it's every time I go back and set a comp with him, I'm like, wow, that's easily something that I should have thought of myself, but I didn't because I'm not smart.
That's what I'm talking about. Just getting out to set with other people, like those little things you learn.
I think that's the
unbelievable.
greatest way to learn is creative individuals getting together and just like and setting and we
guest
all see guest setters. We all see something different, and then all of a sudden we're like, that's a really good idea. Or sometimes, like I'm sure there's sometimes that I've gone into comps and set with a new crew, and they've been like, this guy, who knows what he's doing.
That's what all of us feel when you show up, man. We're just, what is happening? But it's usually for the better. We'll be honest. Thank you so much, man, for talking for a little bit.
This was so cool, dude. I'm so psyched.
I know we'll talk again for sure, and I'm going to have to post a picture of your only setters will care about this, but you guys here at Up the Block, you built the coolest setting workstation, mobile workstation. It's like, I'm trying to think of what it is. It's like when you, like if you see like a picture of a spaceship and it's like pointing out or like a James Bond car that has all these like special hidden features, and you're like, it's got rocket launchers and like a smoke ejector.
It's got a cup holder.
Yeah, this setting cart is the coolest thing I've ever seen. So we'll put that up on the website as well, so people can see that. But thanks a million, Dustin Curtis.
Man. Thank you so much for having me.
We'll talk to you soon, okay? Yeah. That's it for this week's episode of Plastic Weekly. Thanks to Dustin Curtis for answering my questions, and thanks to you guys for listening. Make sure you visit plasticweekly.com to find footnotes, references, and other bonus content related to this episode, including pictures of Dustin's very cool setting workstation. Our theme music is by Javelin. Plastic Weekly is currently self-funded, and I'm not airing ads just yet, so please support it by subscribing on iTunes or Google Play, leave it a good review, and share it with your friends. You have no idea how much that helps the podcast. And I could never make Plastic Weekly without the support of Climbers Rock in Burlington, Ontario. You can read more about this episode and leave a comment at plasticweekly.com, and you can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and you can send me an email to tyler@plasticweekly.com with your comments, concerns, questions, compliments. Just tell me you're out there. Somewhere. Good luck to everybody competing at Mello Blocco in Italy and at the Sport and Speed Regionals across the United States this weekend. We'll be thinking about you. Talk to you next week.